Welcome, everybody, to the SoxProspects.com podcast, the web's number one source for information on the Boston Red Sox from top to bottom, from Fort Myers to Worcester, across the Pike to Fenway, and all stops in between. Thank you for listening. My name is Chris Hatfield. I'm the executive editor of Sox Prospects, and I'm joined by our director of scouting, our own Yankee Doodle dandy himself, Ian Kundle. Ian, happy 4th of July. Happy July here in baseball world. We are about halfway through the season. We are coming up
more than halfway through the minor league season.
We are halfway through the minor league season. That's true. We are more than halfway through.
Because I think the first half ended like the 29th or something for all those teams.
It did, yeah, because they had a 2-day break. Is that no? I think the halfway point was before the 2-day break.
Yeah, it was before. Actually. It was like the 20. It was it was like a Friday or something. It wasn't even like the end of a series. Because I remember.
Is that true?
Yeah, because I was in Worcester and they said like this is the last game of the first half or something. Or
all right, which matters more in the lower minors than the upper minors.
Which
that's interesting.
Yeah, we'll get into. We'll say how the first half wrapped up for those teams because one team did make the playoffs.
Yes, the Greenville Drive are your South Atlantic League Southern Division champs. I think technically
first half champs. Please
first half champs.
Remember, it's a longer title than that.
Yes, first too many. There were more words. Say all the words.
Yeah.
Of course. But yeah, congrats to the Drive, who on the strength mostly of their pitching, but we can talk about that. They had a damn good lineup too for a lot of the first half too. So congrats to them. They will be going to the playoffs with a very different team than the one they won in the first half with. But that's kind of the point too, right?
Yeah.
So
but I think that's why they changed it. So they want to reward teams for the first half. Is like
that's why it's always been like that. Yeah, exactly. So congrats to the Drive. And so the first half is over, but we've got plenty to talk about. We've got more promotions. We've got happenings up in the majors. Looking back at the first half, Ian and I, since our last episode, it is draft week. Since our last episode, we've seen Salem, Portland, and Worcester. So plenty of firsthand scouting looks. Of course, like you mentioned, the draft. So lots to talk about. But before we get into that, we want to say if you want to support the show, first of all, thank you for doing so by downloading, streaming, whatever it is that you do to listen. But you can also rate and review us on iTunes, Spotify, RIP Stitcher, which is apparently going away, Apple Podcasts, I think I mentioned iTunes, Spotify, Amazon Music, Google Podcasts, whatever podcatcher of choice you use. You could, if there's some way to rate and review us, do that. You can tell a friend, tell a family member, tell someone you meet at the fireworks. You can support us on patreon.com/SoxProspects or on SoxProspects.com/donate. It is the Sox Prospects donation drive. It is going well. We appreciate all the support y'all can give us. We do what we do for free. But on patreon.com, if you contribute a certain amount per episode, you get some neat perks. And if you just want to contribute to the site, if you think of it as like leaving a tip, basically, that goes a long way towards helping us do things like pay for travel to spring training, fall instructs, pay for back-end things like servers and equipment and things like that, web hosting, that sort of thing, podcast hosting. That goes a long way towards helping with all of those costs, and we appreciate it. So if you want to support, thank you very much. If you're unable to, we get it. Enjoy the website. Enjoy the content. We like having it out there for free, and that's why we do. And finally, you could send us your emails to podcast@soxprospects.com. Again, that's podcast@soxprospects.com. Got a few emails over the last week or two that were forwarded for being sent to the wrong place. So again, podcast@soxprospects.com, because we want to talk about what you all want to hear about. So hit us up. And we've got a bunch of emails this episode that we're going to hit up. One quick note on the emails, I guess I would say email advice. If you look at your email and you need to scroll on your phone to read the whole email, unless it's because you've got it, zoomed way in. But like if you've got, a new iPhone or Samsung phone or Google phone or whatever it is you use, and even zoomed out, you need to scroll a fair amount to read it, it's probably too long. So maybe consider cutting it down a little bit. So if you have to explain a really well thought out hypothetical, maybe do it a little more concisely. It makes it easier to read on the show rather than spending, 2, 3, 4 minutes reading the email. So just a word of advice. Thank you all. All right. Well, let's jump into it, Ian. Let's start, I guess we'll call it promotions, but the first area of promotions is the major league club. So these are kind of the two things that we tend to hit on first. And the major league club, since the last episode, they've called up a bunch of guys from AAA, a couple for the first time in their careers. And that would be David Hamilton, Brandon Walter, both made their MLB debuts. And they also called up catcher Caleb Hamilton, which there really isn't too much to say about that other than like, this is literally why you acquire Caleb Hamilton to have him in AAA. The interesting thing with Caleb Hamilton, Ian, before we put a bow on it, is that since Jorge Alfaro opted out, Hamilton hasn't been the primary catcher there. They've been using Ronaldo Hernandez as the primary catcher there, which is weird to me given that Hernandez was playing less than Hamilton while Alfaro was there. But at any rate, Hamilton was there. He came up. He's the guy. But we've seen David Hamilton, Ian, as the everyday shortstop. I think pretty much bearing out everything we had to say about him. And then Brandon Walter coming up as well, being used with an opener, which you made the point on Twitter, which I agree with 100%, that that's a great way to use him with a right-handed opener. But that said, so they're both up. They both made their debuts. I think they're both Dennis Green guys and that they are what we thought they were at this point. Not sure if you got any thoughts on the debuts of David Hamilton and Brandon Walter, and I guess Caleb Hamilton, if you care to chime in on that.
No, I think that well, I guess I should have said no. I'll start with Hamilton. I think it just highlights something we've talked
David
about.
Hamilton.
No, Caleb Hamilton.
Oh, okay.
I did that deliberately. Sorry.
You got me. Good job.
It just highlights what we talked about, where there's just a lack of catching depth in the Red Sox system in the upper minors, especially right now. The guys that they have who can hit a little bit can't really catch, and the guys who can catch can't hit. They just don't really, and he can't hit at all. But I mean, he's an okay defender. Like, it's fine, and that's why he's there, and that's why you have a guy like him in AAA. But it's just something where if McGuire's injury kind of keeps going, then they might need to look outside the organization for some help there.
Well, it's interesting because Mike Zunino got like DFA'd or something.
Yeah, so
right when
Sandy
he came
Leon,
up.
I'm pretty sure on the same day. So I saw a lot of jokes on Twitter about that. But I mean, I just look at, like, if you look in Worcester right now, other than Ronaldo Hernandez, the backup catcher's Oscar Rangel, who is
Steven Scott's there too.
Yeah, he's not really catching though, which is weird.
It's weird. Like, I mean, part of that I think is
I saw them for a series, and he was only playing first base or DH. So
yeah, and it's interesting. Part of that is by necessity, and we're going to talk about this.
Yeah, we'll talk about that a little later.
Injuries are decimating this organization right now, especially on the position players side.
Position players, yeah. But so on Hamilton, like, it's why you have someone like him in the organization. You need guys like that to fill that role for if, in a pinch you have injuries. Moving on to David Hamilton, I think it highlights the just how unlucky they've been at shortstop. Yeah. I mean, the fact that they have like 5 shortstops on the DL and they're having to play someone who I don't think is a shortstop. I think it's kind of borne out that he has pretty big issues defensively there. Most notably, as we've seen, on having to charge the ball and throw it is just not something he's comfortable doing. I think he's had several. The official score has been pretty generous, but yeah, he's not someone that should be playing shortstop every day for a team that is in at least the playoff contention, which much as people have, as much as, the Red Sox season has been up and down, they're still 3 games out of the wild card. And that's with somehow being the best team in baseball, I think, against teams above 500, and somehow having a losing record against teams below 500. But it seems like it's a short-term thing, but he's kind of doing what I expected. He can really run. His speed is a game changer. But other than that, it's just there's not really a tool that should be a starter, if that makes sense. Like, it's maybe an average hit tool, fringe average hit tool. He can't hit lefties, minimal power. And I think we're kind of seeing that he's just being challenged with fastballs and he's not able to really hit them to do any damage. And that's the concern I have with guys with that profile, is that, once you get up to the big leagues, the pitching is obviously much better. They can hit their spots, and you're not going to get those mistake fastballs at 89 miles an hour that you can hit when you're in AAA or AA. You're going to be seeing 95 up in the zone consistently. And if you can't impact the baseball, they're just going to do that over and over again. And I think that he is someone that is not, I don't think he's ready, like, at the plate to be up in the big leagues. Obviously he's there by necessity, but I still think that he's got a chance to be a valuable piece as a bench player, just not in the role that he's currently in.
100%.
Finally,
yeah.
Oh yeah. Do you want to?
I was just going to chime in. Yu Chang is apparently getting activated. I think they said by the end of this week or early next.
He played shortstop last night, I think, or the night before, and I saw him hit a couple of times up in Portland, and
Mhm.
his timing is definitely off, but he looked
Yeah.
okay. He was moving fine, and he didn't seem to be having any wrist issues.
Which is a thing because they've
He's
stopped
shut
his
him down
rehab
twice.
twice,
Yeah.
which is kind of crazy. Like we thought he was going to be back weeks ago.
Well, especially
So
because it's one of these injuries. The hamate bone is one of those injuries that it's all a pain tolerance thing. Nothing's
mhm.
going to change with it. Once they remove it, it's gone.
Yeah.
So it's just how much pain can you play with? And clearly, he was at a level that he wasn't, happy with.
And to be clear, we're not calling him a wuss. Like it's hard to swing a bat to hit major league pitching when it is extremely
Right.
painful to do
Right.
so. Like,
Yeah. So right, but I was just trying to make the point that it's
yeah,
not.
no, I get
It's
you. I'm
just
just
it's
being
just all
clarifying.
yeah.
Yeah.
It's just all up to him. Like it's when he's ready. So hopefully, because they could use his defense back there,
They've already said he's going to immediately become the starting shortstop, which
which he
I thought
should
was,
be. I mean,
yeah. I
yeah,
mean, it's no surprise. It's interesting that they came out and said it. So it's like when he gets activated, Hamilton goes down, like no
yeah.
question. Even though
Which
he's fast, like
you can't hold someone like that on a bench roll.
no. Whereas
You have to.
when Reese McGuire comes back, like Caleb Hamilton, it gets DFA. He's got two
Yeah.
options left, but like
No,
you need that 40-man
well.
spot.
They're going to need one for Chang already. So
Yeah,
that's I assume is going to
which
be
is
one of the pitchers.
it's probably going to be
But
Taylor Scott getting DFA to see if he
yeah,
clears.
yeah. And then the final one was Walter, and I actually think it's interesting. So Walter is not where we're recording this is the July 4th. His game is going on. I don't think Walter's going to pitch in this game. So I think he's
No,
going to
he's
be
probably going to
used
pitch
as
on
a
the
true.
eighth,
He's going to be a true starter
or
or well,
true
opener, but
bulk
he's going
reliever.
to take
Yeah.
a starting position, quote unquote, kind of like how the Rays used to use Ryan Yarbrough, which is
Mhm.
who he remind. I'll say after watching his first
Yeah.
outing against Minnesota, I said that's who he reminded me of, and I just thought it was funny because after the game, Cora said the exact same thing.
Yeah.
Um, but I think with Walter, the thing that's interesting to me is he's kind of undergone an arsenal change this year. Starting in mid-May, he added a cutter, which he'd never thrown before.
hmm
And it was pretty effective in his first outing against Minnesota. The fact that he was able to go 6 2/3 innings, 6 hits, 3 runs, that's a very solid outing. If he can give you, 5 to 6 innings with 3 runs, I'll take that every day of the week. And his fastball, I don't think it's ever going to come back to where it was before. He's kind of pitching now, 90, 91 miles an hour. But if he's pitching, throwing a bunch of cutters, a bunch of changeups, and the occasional sweeper slider pitch, along with, 30, 35% fastballs, then maybe that's something that can play as like a fifth starter depth guy. So I was pretty impressed with his debut, and I'm interested to see how he looks in his next couple of outings, whether they be as a starter or as a follower of an opener.
Yeah, and they're lined up to both be against the Oakland A's, who are recent hot stretch aside by far the worst team in baseball.
I
So
think Kansas City might have caught them though.
that's true. That's true. Thanks. I just got an Apple delivery. My wife loves me. Yeah, it's that, and that's probably on purpose. So it's kind of weird because the Red Sox had to do this weird thing where his AAA starts were all lined up, where he was going to start twice and then get activated on the eighth, which was also the first that he could come back, unless there was an injury, which is what happened. Which was Garrett. We didn't even say this. Garrett Whitlock just went on the IL with a
Yeah,
bone bruise in his elbow, which is apparently best case scenario.
not ideal.
Not ideal, but could have been a lot worse, I guess. So that's why he's up, but he was in line to start on the eighth, and then they had a rain out, so they had to do this weird thing where they moved him into the bullpen, and his last AAA appearance was a 2 inning stint out of the bullpen to like keep him throwing, but like
It was
not
basically a
use
side
his
session.
bullets. Yeah,
It's
it was
like a
basically a
good
side
side
session
yeah.
in a game, right?
Yeah.
Exactly, and he was probably going to do one more of those this week before getting recalled for the eighth. I guess they probably you call him up today in case you need to go to him today because he's certainly available. He last pitched on the 30th, but like you were probably hoping to stay away from him, use him on the 8th, use him on I think it's the 18th. They're going to need their fifth starter again, although maybe sooner now that, although Paxton will be back from the paternity list.
Paxton's back Friday. Yeah.
Yeah. So Paxton will be back from the paternity list. Although, so if he's back on Friday, why don't they just throw today's the 4th on Tuesday? I guess the 8th is after that. I don't know. Whatever. Anyway.
I think they said it's Bayo tomorrow, Crawford the
Yes.
next day, then
Yes.
Paxton Friday.
Okay.
And then a bullpen game the day after, I'm pretty sure.
Which would be Walter.
Which is the 8th, I think.
Yes. And that's what he was being lined up for.
Yeah.
Right. Okay. So that makes sense. Right. So they just wound up needing someone today because of the paternity list thing, and the Whitlock getting hurt means they could bring Walter up first and use him today if they needed to. So, and then work it out from there if they didn't. So anyway,
yep.
Yeah, Walter, go ahead.
No, I was just going to say that I do think it's encouraging though that he showed more in that he's not going to miss a ton of bats, but he showed more. I was pretty impressed with what he was able to do, and I think the Twins that's it's an okay lineup, but if he can, there's not a lot of margin for error, but if you can, if you have four pitches that are average-ish, you can get away with that as one of the last members of a pitching staff, whether it be in like a bull crawl or whatever. And I do I do think it'll be interesting to see what they kind of do with him going forward because we've seen Chris Murphy has gotten a lot better since he moved to the bullpen full time. So I do wonder if that's something once they get guys healthy and if they get a little more starting pitching depth maybe for next season that it's something they consider with him, trying to shorten him to like 2-3 inning appearances and see if he can experience something kind of like what Murphy did where gets the velo bump, becomes more of basically a two pitch guy and has really taken off in that role compared to what he was doing as a starter.
Yeah, and I mean, it's, in that bulk role, the way you got to think about it is if he can get through the back of a lineup twice and the top of a lineup once, just to kind of illustrate it, I saw your Donnie Monegro yesterday for Salem pitch against Fredericksburg, and he had 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 swing. He got 10 swinging strikes in his outing. Okay, of those 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 of the, how many did I say, Ian?
You said 10.
5 of the 10 were against the last two hitters in Fredericksburg's lineup. He was better against I mean, it's completely logical. You pitch better against the worst hitters in the lineup, right?
Yeah.
But it's like, it really does bear out, even when you're talking about hitters at the major league level, which is not the Monegro example, but it's like, getting those guys more often allows you to pitch deeper into a game is really what it turns into, and to not have the multiple looks penalty and, get through the guys you can get through multiple times more often. Yeah, well, it's the depth is being tested. And I guess one other thing, Ian, we should mention, and one promotion that is not on my list that I think we can mention here because it's relevant to the major leagues, because a lot of people immediately started looking at it for two reasons, and we can talk about both, is Ceddanne Rafaela was promoted to Worcester last week. Everyone sees, oh, Rafaela is a good defensive shortstop. The Red Sox have had all of the problems at short. They're not going to rush Ceddanne Rafaela to the major leagues. I guarantee you this. They are not, like, there's too much to work on at the plate. And yes, he might come up and play at least an above average, if not better, defensive shortstop. And that would be great. If Yu Chang weren't coming back in a week, I'm sure I would be hearing it even more on Twitter. But the problem is, put it this way, did you enjoy poor hitting Jackie Bradley Jr.? No. How would you feel about worse hitting than bad hitting Jackie Bradley Jr.? Because that's the potential for what Rafaela could be if he's rushed to the majors too quickly and the bat isn't ready. So
Yeah,
you look like you're ready to jump in, Ian. Go ahead.
well, yeah, no, it's when you look at because he got promoted, he earned his promotion. He was there for a long time, and
No question.
I think when
They waited a week or two longer than I thought they might actually.
when you look at his last 34 games, so his last 152, so basically 150 plate appearances in um in in Portland, he hit 341, 384, 533. So it's very good, obviously. 5 home runs, 21 RBIs, 10 walks, 27 strikeouts, and 152 PAs. So, and what he did in that time, and I think it was interesting. I think Brian Abraham talked about it in an article with, I'm going to guess it was Alex, that they basically, or maybe no, Rafael, I think actually talked about it. I think he quoted him, was that Rafaela basically got back to basics and just he went up there and was aggressive again. And I think, and I agree with what he was talking about that early in the season, he was taking pitches for the sake of it. He was just trying to work counts and it's a tough medium because he's not a patient guy. He's not someone who's going to go up there, work counts, give you those quality 9, 10 pitch at not even 9, 6, 7 pitch at bats, see a bunch of pitches, wait for a mistake and punish it. He's more the guy that he's going to go up there and ambush the first pitch he really sees that he likes. And I think that them trying to tweak his approach and swing decisions almost had a negative, detrimental effect on him at the beginning of the year, whether it be mentally or what he was trying to do approach wise at the plate. And I think going back to what he did, it worked for him at Double A. And this is the concern though, is like during that time, the big change was that his in zone miss rate dramatically decreased. So he was making way more contact on pitches in the zone, which makes sense. If he's going up there being aggressive, his timing is better. He's going to be on those pitches instead of,
Yeah.
questioning himself. Oh, should I take it? Should I swing? I'm late. I miss a pitch in the zone, which is what was happening early in the year. In that time, even though his numbers were outstanding, as you saw, chase rate didn't really change. It was basically the same thing. It was around 40%. It was slightly under, so slightly lower than it had been for the rest of the season, but it's still at, that alarmingly high rate. And that's why, it's still to be seen what he ultimately is going to develop into at the plate and why, as you said, you can't just rush him up now, because if you're rocking a 40%, 38% chase rate in AA, it's only going to get worse in the big leagues. And that has
Better
a
stuff,
chance,
yeah.
as you said, to really be a negative. And so I'd rather just get him up there to Worcester, which he is now, give him time. And if you tell me that he's someone who spends, 3, 4, 500 plate appearances in Worcester, I would not be surprised at all. Like, I
Yeah.
think this is a long-term play because his defense, his base running, things like that are so exciting. You want to give him every chance to develop at the plate, and you don't want to risk, ruining that or hurting that by pushing him too quickly to the big leagues where, maybe he'll have a hot streak to start, but that kind of stuff gets pretty quickly exposed, as we've seen with, other aggressive hitters in the past. And so I think that it's going to be interesting to see how he handles AAA. I think so far he's got, it's a small sample. He's got four strikeouts, no walks in 21 plate appearances. So he's 4 for 20 with a home run. So, adjustment period, of course, but I think the reason that a lot of people were interested in it is what you're saying is he's been playing a lot of shortstop there.
Yeah.
And I don't think that is anything to do with the major leagues. It's because Worcester has 0 position players. And
to be fair, before this actually happened, I'm the one who said, let's see how they use him in Worcester.
Yeah, but
it was like, keep an eye on it. Because just for context, last year and this year, so far before he got to Worcester, he was playing center field every day, but playing shortstop once a week, essentially, give or take. Sometimes twice a week. Sometimes he wouldn't get a day at short in a given week. The problem, like you were going to say, Ian, Worcester has been just crushed by their own and the major leagues' injuries, because you've got Hamilton is up. Duran's been up for a while. He's not coming back.
Yeah.
On their roster, Emmanuel Valdez is on the IL. Christian Koss is on the IL. Ryan Fitzgerald is on the IL. So their roster right now is...
And Nico Goodrum opted out.
And Nico Goodrum opted out yesterday. Yeah, so it's even worse. Or a couple days ago, but he was officially released yesterday as we're recording this. So their roster is this on the hitting side. Catcher only, Ronaldo Hernandez, catcher DH. Catcher / first base, Steven Scott, who had not played first base in a year and a half, but goes up to Worcester, and for some reason, like you said, he's playing first base a lot, which is a little weird. Utility guy, Nick Sogard, who can play wherever the heck you need him. He's had a great year.
I think I love Nick Sogard. We'll talk about it a little bit when we get to Worcester, but he's better at second or third than shortstop.
Yes,
he's not.
And that's typically where he plays.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, he was deferring to Hamilton was playing short every day.
But he was having to play. He was playing everyday shortstop before Rafaela got called up.
Because he was playing everyday shortstop because Hamilton went up. Right.
Yeah. They had no choice.
Bobby Dahlbeck, first and third. They've stopped with the stupid shortstop thing with him. Thank God.
He's playing outfield though.
He's playing some outfield now as well. But the thing is, I don't know if he's sick or what. He hasn't played in the 4 days.
Really?
There's a rain out in there, but he hasn't played. Rafaela, who has been playing he played center field once and he's played shortstop since. And then outfielder Marcus Wilson.
He's played center twice.
He's played center twice?
He played there last night.
Once. Oh, okay. I didn't look at last night. Thank you. Marcus Wilson, who's only an outfielder. Willie Abreu, who's only an outfielder. Narciso Crook, who is an outfielder who they are having play first base some. And Daniel Palka, who's a first baseman / right fielder who you would prefer to have at DH.
Yeah.
On their bench, they have Oscar Rangel, who's their third catcher, who's only active because Caleb Hamilton is up.
And Oscar Rangel started the season. He was the third catcher in Portland, wasn't he?
No, he started in Worcester.
Oh, did he start in Worcester? Okay.
Yeah, he's just the guy that sits on the dev list until they need him.
Yeah, because he can catch, but he can't hit.
He's zero bat.
Yeah.
Max Ferguson, who was called up from Greenville because they needed a utility guy, and Tyler McDonough, who was called up from Portland because they needed a utility guy. Neither of those guys would be there if it weren't for the injuries.
No, but they both can play both infield and outfield, so that's why they're there.
That's it.
They give you a ton of flexibility. Yeah.
That's it. Like, go look at our rosters page on the website, soxprospects.com/org will get you there, ORG. Or just click team rosters at the top of the website. Like, they are thin as hell there. Like, they have no one. So that's why, like, Rafaela has to play some shortstop more than they probably want him to play, just based on numbers. Because, like, him and Sogard are the only guys that can play short. Him, like, the only other guys that can play middle, or I guess McDonough can.
But
McDonough can. You're right.
the point is though, you don't want, like, McDonough and Ferguson are guys whose bat aren't ready to be at that level. They're only up there for depth reasons. And so, 5-6 games a week, you need Sogard or Rafaela to be at shortstop.
Yeah.
So you're pretty much stuck with one of them, and the problem is that you need another infielder. So because Sogard's the only one, because without Goodrum, they don't have anyone else to play second. So it's like either Sogard or Rafaela have to play both middle infield spots pretty much every day, unless they have Ferguson or McDonough in the lineup. So that's
which is not going to happen every day. Like, they just can't.
Which is why Rafael is playing as much shortstop as he is.
And which, to be clear, like, this is a thing that happens in the minor leagues. Like, this has happened. I can remember having to explain to people why Matt Sheely got called all the way up from low A to triple A. And it's like, oh my gosh, they're doing this thing. It's like, no, this is a thing that happens. You do that with guys who aren't like the top prospect.
They did it with Nick Lavulo, I remember.
Yes, absolutely. It happens. It's a thing. Because you can't just go sign like an indie guy every week, right? Especially now where there's a reserve list limit.
Yeah.
Yep. There's a domestic reserve list limit of 180.
The thing that will be interesting to see is what happens when Hamilton goes back, when Chang gets activated. Is
David Hamilton? Yeah.
How are they going to split him and Rafaela up at shortstop?
Yes.
And I would guess it will be 5-1, maybe 4-2. But if it's still 3-3 or something like that, that's when different. My eyebrows will be raised. That's interesting.
Yep, exactly. That's a perfect way to put it. And then you'll have like Ferguson go back down, and maybe that's what pushes Blaze Jordan to Portland. I don't know. But at any rate, so that's the depth issues there. Other promotions, Ian. Last episode we didn't talk about one of what are now several promotions from the FCL to Salem. The one that happened literally the day after we recorded is Yordani Monegro, which we were so certain was going to happen that we almost talked about it anyway, and we probably should have. I saw him yesterday, so I'll talk a little bit more about him when we talk about what I saw in Salem, but came in this year with much improved stuff from prior years. They had him start in the FCL. He made a handful of starts there and got bumped up to Salem. I saw him yesterday. Definitely belongs in Salem. Looks pretty good. He'll be ranked in our new rankings that are coming out shortly this week.
I think he's ranked right now, isn't he?
Not prior. No, he was unranked.
I think I had him like 650.
He was like a borderline guy, right? Like, he was a guy that entering the year was a guy that you might keep alive in your like 70 to 80 range. And then we liked what we saw in camp. So he's like, I think
he's like around. Yeah, because I saw him in camp and he was, we'll get into it more, but he was basically just a 2-pitch guy. It was fastball, curveball. But the stuff, he was, feel for a breaking ball. He's mid-90s. So interesting guy. And he's really taken off this year. He's one of several low minors arms they've had who've really come into their own the last couple of months, or it's kind of since mid-May is the big change. But
yeah, he won't be top 20, but like, he'll be certainly top 50, maybe top 40. I think.
It should be top 40. To me, he belongs in that tier with like Blaylock, Bastardo, Rogers. Like, there's a bunch of low and high.
Yeah.
No, not
Encarnacion's lower. Yeah.
Yeah. No, it's like Blaylock, Rogers, Bastardo. They're relievers, but like Alex Hoppy, Chris Troy, like, it's a bunch of guys who are like 35 to 45 range, who they're all probably relievers, but they're all, pretty interesting for various reasons.
Sure.
But yeah, they're solid, like fringe 35, 40 types right now. So yeah.
Yep. So he got promoted. That was interesting. Other guys that got promoted, it's the same thing about everyone is hurt. Basically, the Salem has received, the one other promotion was Brooks Brannon, the catcher, he was a 9th rounder last year in above slot.
I think 8th. Was it 9th?
8th
or 9th?
8th or 9th. Got promoted. He was splitting time.
9th, you were right.
9th. Okay. Was splitting time with Johan Fran Garcia in the FCL, now up to Salem, where he's splitting time with Anderso Lira.
You mean Babe Ruth Garcia?
Right. Yeah. We'll talk about that in a minute. But moved up. Saw him as well. He's interesting. Wasn't overwhelmed. I mean, the dude's quadzilla. I'll tell you that much.
No, he's jacked. He
It's
had a tank too, didn't you? You had
Yeah,
done a
I got
video.
video of an
Yeah.
absolute bomb he hit. I mean, just flick the wrists. I mean, there's pop
It's
there.
it's huge raw power, but
Yeah.
it's just I
Can he
think
get to it
the
is a
other parts
question.
of his game are what need work.
Yep. So he's up in Salem. Again, was splitting time with Lyra. May have left that game with an injury. I think he just got dinged up. So that'll be something to keep an eye on. And the other guys that got promoted are Alexis Hernandez, Albertson Asigen, and Claudio Simon. Those three guys kind of go in the same category of Salem had Juan Chacon get hurt. Salem had Miguel Blaze get hurt, which I guess is what got Garcia, Stinks and Garcia up. But they had Roman Anthony get promoted, and I think that's what opened up the spot for Alexis Hernandez. These are just all guys who were in the FCL. Hernandez is certainly the most interesting of those three. The other two guys are really just depth.
Yeah.
But Hernandez, you picked him out particularly, Ian. I remember last spring training, not this year, but 2022. He's kind of an interesting guy, but
He's just a good athlete. He's
Yeah.
he's new to hitting, which is weird to say, but he was a pitcher actually coming up, and then they moved into a position player. So he's got a decent arm, some feel at the plate, good approach. Like he walks a ton. The contact skills and the power we'll see, but yeah, good swing. Like someone to keep an eye on there. I kind of like him. And I think the other one I think we should mention is it's opened up some room on the FCL, which is where Framey de Leon came over, who is one of the who was their second biggest. What?
Yeah.
Oh, did he already go
international
back?
signing. No. He's there and he'll stay up. They don't shuttle guys back and forth, but he wasn't even starting in the DSL.
Yeah, I mean, yeah,
he's a depth guy. I mean, and I think this is part and parcel of the injury thing. Like they needed bodies there.
he's a good glove.
Good
People
glove.
were not. Yeah,
Yeah.
just the feedback we got from scouts who saw the DSL last year was he was not someone really to keep an eye on. Even with his bonus, he was just kind of a guy there. So we'll see. I mean, you never know. People can develop late physically, add strength, but yeah, until we see some consistent playing time and get some reports, right now it's kind of he's not someone in consideration for
I
the
wouldn't
top
call it
60 or anything.
I'm not going to call it a promotion until he's kind of playing every other game there. Like he's
hitting 571
in 2 starts,
7 at bats, but
Okay,
you know what I mean?
Yeah. While we're talking about the FCL, Ian, we should mention a bunch of rehabbers that just popped back up there. Mikey Romero
finally happened.
Finally started playing. Interesting that I think did Noah Song beat him, or did he beat Noah Song?
I think he beat Noah Song by
a
day or
couple
something.
days.
Yeah.
Those back strains, man. But yeah, he's playing, middle infield every day in the FCL, probably goes up to Salem soon, one figures.
I wonder if they'll just wait till after the All-Star break so he can play through it. Because
no,
FCL...
FCL's off too.
Oh, really? I thought the FCL kept playing.
Yeah, okay. I thought they did too. This is new this year that they're not playing. In fact, they have a longer break than the other affiliates
then he'll probably go up. Yeah.
That's probably when he goes up, I bet.
Yeah.
So I mean, I don't really care about the numbers yet. I haven't even looked at them because I just really don't care.
6 for 22 with a double. 3 strikeouts, 3 walks. I mean, this is basically spring training.
It's spring training.
That's how you have to look at it.
Yep, it's his spring training. He'll be there. That's why he's getting a lot of time there. Gilberto Jimenez also there. He's only played a couple games so far, I think. He's rehabbing from an injury. They have a few guys that are down there rehabbing injuries that are on full season affiliate ILs. Also popping up there, Tommy John rehabber Jeremy Wu Yelland, who made a couple starts, then made a start in the then made an appearance out of the bullpen where he lasted an inning, and then in his second inning of work got absolutely shelled and came out
with an injury. Yeah.
Potentially an injury, so we'll have to keep an eye on that. Also Matt Lickwicki, who they drafted in 2019, Ian.
Yeah, it's been a while.
Finally made his pro debut.
He did.
He might have been 2021, actually. I think he was 2021. He wasn't 2019.
Yeah.
He was their 10th rounder in 2021 out of Indiana. He had TJ in college, and then he has just missed the ensuing time since he was drafted with injuries. So he's finally rehabbing. So good to see him take the mound as a pro and get some experience out of the bullpen. We're talking 2 appearances so far, so it's not even worth looking at how he's done. But
his velo is not back. He's 90. He's in the low 90s now.
Because he was the one that threw 100 in college, right? Or
99,
touched 100, 99.
But his velo is not. He's not showing that since he came back. Obviously, he hasn't pitched in basically 3 years. So
right, which you wouldn't expect it necessarily. But yeah, so that's all of the injury type news. I guess Miguel Blaze had his shoulder surgery, so he's done for the year. Sometimes with those things, you got to wait for things like swelling to go down and stuff like that. We mentioned Goodrum opting out, and I guess just one final note, Ian. Oh, I guess a few guys they acquired. We mentioned Taylor Scott. He was DFA'd by the Dodgers, and the Red Sox basically got him for cash considerations. It's fungible bullpen depth. He has options. He can be DFA'd if they need the spot. It's just a depth piece. They also signed Andres Nunez, who had just been released, just again for AAA depth. The most interesting guy they signed is Dinelson Lamet, who someone
Was he an
described.
All-Star like 3 years ago?
Yeah, he finished like fourth in the Cy Young voting, I think. Like
That would have been what season?
I think that's 3 years ago or something when he was with the Padres.
Oh, was 2020 the shortened season?
Yes, was it 2020?
Yeah, he had
Okay.
69 innings, 12 starts, 93 strikeouts, 20 walks.
Yeah, I mean, he shoved. He was, like the internet's, pitch data darling, and just it's a combination of health and just he's not effective anymore either. So the Red Sox are basically taking a flyer to see if they can fix him.
Why not?
Minor league
Doesn't
deal.
cost you anything.
Yeah, someone said, "Well, why?" And it's like, because it's a minor league deal. Like, why not? That's what they should be doing. Take advantage. Sign him to like a high money relative minor league deal and to get a look at him. So we'll see how that works out. He just got activated yesterday.
They also signed Kyle Bearclaw.
They signed. Well, I think they had signed him prior to the last episode, but
no,
maybe
they signed him on the 20th.
Okay, Kyle Bearclaw, to be a starter in AAA, which surprised me because in the majors he had been a reliever. Because I remember
he was starting in indie ball though.
Yeah, he was starting in indie ball, but he had worked in like a setup role in the majors previously.
Yeah, with Miami.
And was in indie ball.
He was actually pretty good. I saw him.
He's had a good couple of starts.
He doesn't strike anyone out, but he's 4 pitches, mixes them well, like low 90, 92 fastball, cutter, slider, changeup. Mostly fastball cutter though. But I would not be surprised at all if he got added to the 40 if they needed like a spot starter or something, and then just DFA him afterwards. But
bulk reliever or something.
He throws strikes. Like it's not a sexy profile, but he could probably give you a couple innings.
Yeah, I mean, if you want to talk about places where their depth has been just decimated, that AAA rotation right now with Walter up is Shane Drohan, which great. That's things working the way they should. Yeah. Kyle Bearclaw, Jake Faria, who they had signed to be a swingman in AAA. So, okay. Rio Gomez, who his entire pro career had been a relief pitcher, has been forced into starting duty in AAA, and he's been okay. Yeah. And Norwith Gudinho, who has been a AAA swingman as well. So they have like one legit starter in that rotation right now. So it's kind of wild because Mata's hurt, Walter's up, Crawford's up. Who else am I looking for? I think, everyone else is up or hurt. So Chris Murphy is up in the major league bullpen. So it's a lot of that's one area where their depth has been really tested.
Yeah.
So,
well, and they released Dermody also. So that was
the Matt Dermody thing. Right. Which, great.
Yeah.
All right. So that's it on those news items.
Let's talk about Noah Song. Can we just get out of the way?
Yeah, we're going to get asked about it anyway. Yeah. So Noah Song is on a rehab assignment with the Clearwater Threshers. He's pitching out of the bullpen in 1-inning stints.
He's thrown twice now.
He has thrown twice now. The stuff is not, unsurprisingly, not where it was before he went on a 3-year military leave.
No, he's 90 to 92, topping out at 93 now. Whereas, and I said this on Twitter, I saw pretty much all of his appearances in Lowell back when he first signed.
Between the two of us, I think we did, because I saw him in Aberdeen.
All his home appearances. Yeah, you're right. I should have said that. And he was, 95 to 97, 98, topping out at 99 back then. So this is completely understandable and why it needed to be a slow ramp up with him. But it's going to be interesting. So basically how the scenario works is the Phillies have 30 days to add him to the active roster or barring a setback.
Quote, unquote. Yeah, because that's how long a pitching rehab assignment can last. That's where that comes from. That's not a Rule 5 thing. That's just
like mid-July.
Injury rehab assignment. Oh, it's
I think
more
it's
than mid-July. It's late
is it
July because he didn't
is it
start until he's only made 2 appearances and it's July 4th. So it definitely was late
his
June.
first appearance was June 28th. So I guess it's
Yeah. So call
before
it
the
July
trade
20th.
deadline, which is interesting because you might have to make a
It's true.
decision with your 40 man before
That's
then.
actually an interesting point because you can end the rehab assignment without calling him up. It's just the thing;
Right,
he's not doing anything.
but if they do that and it's not an injury setback, they have to send him back to the Red Sox.
Well, so 2 different things. The rehab assignment rule has nothing to do with
Right, but my point is if the rehab assignment ends and he's not called up,
he
then
just sits on he sits on the injured list. He sits on the IL, like not doing anything, which no one, even including the Phillies, wants. So
yeah,
that's
and if
why
he
something has to happen. They, in theory, can ask to get another 30 days, and that's usually like Tommy John guys. They'll do that with.
that would be
They would not do that with him. I can't imagine that gets approved because that would so clearly be like you are trying to game the Rule 5 rules because they would need to get like approval from the commissioner's office to do that.
Yeah, because I mean, I'm pretty like the goal is to get it to somehow that he can come up in September,
Mhm.
but that obviously
We presume this has not been reported. This
no,
is
this is
looking at what they're
just looking at the
clearly doing.
best way to try and keep him. That it makes the most sense to do it this way.
So he,
But
like you
the only
said,
way you would need another 30-day rehab assignment, basically.
and I don't think they're going to get that. So it looks like what's going to have to happen with him for the Phillies to keep him is they recall him probably after the trade deadline because what they do at the trade deadline is going to determine whether or not they've got room on the roster to keep him up.
Yeah.
They would then attempt to keep him for August, September, and
Which
April of
knocks
next
out
year,
about
which knocks out
60
60-ish days.
Yeah.
Call it 60,
Yeah.
just to round numbers. They would need to keep him on the active roster for 30 days next year, which not
I
terribly
mean,
hard,
but the thing is, you'd
honestly.
have a normal off season, so you'd have a better
Normal off
idea of what
season,
his
he's
stuff is
on the
like.
40 man the
Yeah.
entire off season. So that now, even if you're playing like, and then at that point you're starting, I mean, his service time clock is already starting next year. I guess he uses his first option, which at his age, I don't really care about the number of
No.
options,
No.
but they would do that to get him free of the Rule 5 rules and be able to option him to the minors.
Yeah. It's going to be, I mean,
we'll see.
it's going to be tough, especially because the Phillies are in contention.
Mm-hmm.
But Dabrowski seems pretty committed to trying to keep him. So,
and to address one point too, Ian, I've seen a lot of like, why are they messing with this kid's development type things? I will throw out there that I don't think anything they've done with him so far is any different than what the Red Sox would have done.
yeah, I disagree a little bit. I think he would not have ramped up as quickly as he did in spring training.
Oh, even slower. Sure.
That's
fair.
the part
Agreed.
I would disagree with. I think
Agreed.
that if the Red Sox, if he had stayed in the Red Sox org, he probably would not have picked up a baseball until like May. They would have had him do arm strength and like not picked up a baseball to throw on a mound. I mean,
yep.
The Phillies brought him in. He literally like got his waiver, and the Phillies had him on a mound like 2 days later.
Yeah, that was stupid.
That's not how it should have been done. No. But in the sense that him, he would have started the season on the IL or some sort of list for the Red Sox. He would have probably just been making his debut around now, or maybe not even around now. But yeah,
I don't know that they would have even had to put him. They wouldn't have had to put him on a list. He would have just been an extended.
Yeah, you're right. He just would have been an extended.
Yeah.
The big difference was just the ramping up, which caused the back injury. That's the part that I don't think would have happened. But
I agree.
Yeah, I mean, it's a tough one because the flip side is he's been getting paid major league money, so good for him. That's awesome.
Yeah.
And compared to being, if he was still with the Red Sox, he would have been getting minor league money. So
right.
Financially, it's a big win for him.
And it's not like he got a big bonus. His bonus was $100K.
No, exactly. So it's a tough one because on the one hand, yeah, I want everyone to be successful playing baseball and I want them to make as much money as possible. And he's making more money now than he would have if he was still with the Red Sox. But at the same time, I think for his chances of being a long-term major league asset, this has been somewhat detrimental so far. But we'll see how it ends up.
Maybe. And I get that. That's the point that I don't know that I get the point with the ramp up, but like, I think with the amount of time he has left, that he has in terms of his age, like he probably comes back in the bullpen. Right.
Yeah, no, he's probably a reliever now.
He's probably a reliever now. They definitely ramp him up slower. He probably, instead of going to the Florida State League, which is high A, he probably goes to like Salem, low A, to just let him progress up like a Tommy John guy, almost just like let him progress up as the stuff lets him. Yeah. I mean, honestly, the chances at this point, Ian, that he turns into like the stud prospect that he was when he was in the system are so slim that like that amount of hand wringing I've seen about it is probably not worth it.
Yeah, the odds are, best case scenario, he turns into a usable middle reliever now.
Yeah.
But I mean, you never know. Like maybe after an off season, a normal off season with weight training, bullpens, maybe he goes to Driveline or does one of those places.
Mhm.
He comes in next year and he's a little closer to what he was stuff wise the year before. But it's just cool. I think it's cool to see him back pitching on a mound, regardless of where he is. And
Agreed.
I think it would be a really cool story if he did make it up back to the big leagues in some
Agreed.
capacity. So you just kind of have to wait and see at this point. There's nothing. It's out of the Red Sox control. It's out of all of our control. Like what's going to happen is going to happen, and he might make it back. He might not, but you just wish the kid best and hope that, or the guy the best, and hope that he can make a nice career out of this. Because yeah, it'd be a very cool story.
Moving on, Ian, the two of us have seen a lot of baseball over the last few weeks, so let's talk about it. Do you want to start from the top down or do you want to go from the bottom up?
Let's go from the bottom up. People want to
All
hear
right.
your voice.
Do they? Do they though?
Yeah.
I don't want to hear my voice. My wife doesn't want to hear my voice.
I never want to hear my voice, but I still do
Fair.
this podcast. So
Fair
yeah.
enough. All right. Yeah. So I saw Salem in Fredericksburg for for 3 games of their recent series. Worked out nicely with the holiday and Monday the 3rd being a pretty slow day for me at the day job. So I was able to get down there for that day as well. Interesting crew there. It's not it's a medium level talented team for a low A team. Salem has been coming down to this area, and I've been able to see them a fair amount over the past few years. It's not the most talented Salem team I've seen.
Rotation though. You got
The
good
rotation
pitching.
is nice. I mean,
Yeah.
I missed Elmer Rodriguez Cruz, which was
Yeah.
disappointing. But I did get to see Jose Ramirez, Luis Perales, and Yordani Monegro. Perales by far the best pitcher I saw from Salem, unsurprisingly, as expected. He had a terrific outing. He struck out 12 guys in 5 innings. When you consider he only faced 3, 6, 7, 8, 11, and 4 is 15, 18. So he struck out 12 of the 18 guys he faced. He struck out 2/3 of them. It was one of those things where it's like he was clearly cruising, but it was just like to look up and like at the end of the day and see what the numbers were was pretty cool. Um, his day was interesting. He started with 7 straight balls and was sitting like 93, 94, but then something clicked. He battled back with that second hitter. Obviously, he walked the first one, got to 3-0 with the second one, and battled back to strike the second hitter out. Cruz, who's like a pretty decent prospect, Armando Cruz in the national system. Battle back to 93 strike, 93 foul, 93 swinging strike, which was combined with a caught stealing by that would have been Lira that day. And then after that, he locked in, and his next hitter, he was 96, 97, 96, 97 for a strikeout. 96, 87 mile per hour slider, 96, 97 for a strikeout. So he really locked in at that point. He really only had one other batter, which was a 6-pitch walk that he kind of lost his control a little bit. But other than that, I mean, the hits he allowed a single to right to the second hitter of the second inning on an 83 mile per hour slider. I think that might be the only. He might have been charged with another hit, which was on an 85 mile per hour changeup. That was a play that probably should have been made at
He only gave
short.
up 2 hits, so I
Yeah,
don't know
it
if that
says
was
2
one of them.
hits. So the second one, I might have put in as an error, honestly. And the shortstop that game was Abram Liendo, who's probably the worst shortstop of the 3 guys they have that play shortstop. I think Liendo probably should have made that play. It wasn't an easy play. I get why they called it a hit, but it was one you'd like to see made. So that one wasn't really on. I wouldn't have put it in as a hit. Other than that, he cruised. He basically struck almost everyone else out, which was kind of incredible. He had a couple walks.
12 of his 15 outs were strikeouts. So,
yeah, I mean, it was crazy. Yeah, it was kind of unbelievable. The fastball he held his velocity through all 5 innings. He was mostly sitting 95 to 97, save for that early blip. Later, he had a few more that maybe got down to 93, 94, but like held his velocity as well as you would hope through the outing. Threw the slider and changeup with confidence, threw them in any count. Both kind of mid to high 80s. I don't want to give precise velo bands just because on the angle there that I had to sit at, it's kind of tough sometimes if it's a like slider that drops more vertically or that drops in a way that like the umpire is kind of blocking me. It's a little harder to see at that angle, but love both pitches. I should say slider or curveball. We have it and have been. If you told me it was a curveball, I believe. I just don't see many like mid 80s curveballs. It has sharp break. I've also seen it referred to as a slider, and when he was warming up between innings, he seemed to be calling it a slider with the glove motion that he was making before throwing it. So that's why I'm calling it a slider. It might be a curve. I really liked him. He's pitched with poise. The fastball. Put it this way: he was matched up with Jarlin Susana from the national system. Susana was routinely hitting 99 and 100 on the gun. And this is like the legit gun, not the scoreboard. Actually,
Well,
the scoreboard gun wasn't even on, which I found interesting.
it's also funny though with how they get there because Susana's like 6'6", what,
Yes,
230,
he's a monster.
240, whereas
He's a
Paralysis is
monster.
like 6', 6'1".
Yeah,
Like he's
normal
not a
build.
very he's
Medium athletic frame
he's
is
well
what we have.
proportioned, like
Yes.
Whereas
Some
Susana is just
projection.
a massive human being.
Yeah, he's huge. And it's
But
just
they both throw hard. Yeah.
and Susana, like he's not even max effort either. Like
No.
I wasn't looking at the gun for him in the first inning, and then the second I'm like, well, let me see what he's throwing, and it was just like 99, 99, 100.
There's a reason he was one of the key pieces of the Juan Soto trade.
Yes, yeah. He is interesting. I mean, if he is not at least a late inning reliever in the major leagues, I would be surprised. I could see him moving to the bullpen, but like, man, that fastball slider combo, whoo, interesting. Paralysis fastball though, like it was interesting. I would love to see the spin rate and the characteristics of Susana's fastball because it seemed like Paralysis was getting more swinging strikes with it. Now, granted, in part that might be that I was pretty unimpressed with Fredericksburg's lineup and their best hitter actually, Dalen Lyle wasn't playing on Sunday, but man, like the ride he gets on that thing up in the zone, just a lot of fastball blown by a guy up in the zone or, maybe a little high out of the zone was impressive to see. 20 swinging strikes, 13 on the fastball, 7 on off speed stuff. The breaking ball was like 11-5 shape. Good feel for spin. He gets over it. He snaps it off pretty consistently, which is good to see at that age. Sometimes we'll front door it, sometimes back doors it, he'll front or back door it to get a strike, or he'll, throw it out of the zone to get swinging strikes. And the changeup, I mean, some of them flash, just the bottom absolutely falling out of them. Just if he goes fastball up, changeup down, breaking ball, works it in and out, in the zone and out of the zone. Really attacked hitters with it. Lira did a great job receiving him that day too. I really liked seeing Anderson Lira behind the plate. Clearly was the best of the 3 catchers I saw. Really impressive outing for Luis Perales. I'm not at the point where I would say like we need to move him up in our rankings. I think he's 8th and he's going to move up to 7th next month. I think, Ian, in our rankings. Right now, I want to say
probably.
Yeah.
I mean, there are people who think he's the best pitching prospect in the system.
And I could believe that. I haven't seen Drohan this year. So
I've seen him a bunch, including recently, and he's not as good, and he has not been as good in AAA as he was in AA. And there's like a few reasons behind that, which I think are interesting. But
we'll get to that in a minute. Yeah, because I want to talk about that for sure. Yeah, but I mean, in the rankings that are up on the website right now, he's 8th, and he is moving up to 7th. I'm fairly certain.
He's passing rankings. Romero, which he should.
He's moving. Yes, 100%. I'm not ready yet
to
put him above Drohan or Anthony.
I thought about it, but I didn't because of just proximity. But,
exactly.
He wouldn't go ahead of Anthony.
No, because Drohan's going to fall behind Anthony next month. Drohan's going to be 6.
Yeah.
I thought about it too. I'm leaving it for now, like you said, proximity.
Yeah.
But Perales is a special arm. He's the best of that low minors pitching group that they have. That's really kind of getting interesting with Wickelman Gonzalez and Elmer Rodriguez Cruz, and then some of the guys that we talked about earlier in that next tier. But yeah, it was a really impressive outing. I really liked what I saw out of Perales there. Definitely want to keep an eye on. I could see him going to Greenville fairly soon, honestly, just to try and, if he has too many more 12 strikeout games, you kind of have to challenge
Yeah,
him.
it's a tough one because of his age and
Yeah.
you kind of want to see him get through a full season just pitching on a set schedule and everything.
Yeah,
But at
because
the
it's the
same
first time
time,
they haven't been significantly limiting his workload
but at
too.
the same time, he's 40 man
He's Rule 5 eligible this
this
offseason.
off season, so you kind of have to make a decision, which is wild to say. It just feels weird that him and Wickelman are in the same
It's
one, but I guess
2020.
Wickelman
Wickelman
wasn't
was last
protected,
year.
but he wasn't protected last year, so
Right.
they're both have to be added this year. And yeah, it's gonna
Corrales
be.
gets picked if he's left available, no question. A team will
I don't
find a
know.
way to make
It's
that
a
work.
tough one. The fact that I Wickelman almost got picked last year makes me probably tend to agree with you, but that's a tough one because and then why I kind of wonder if they'll be more aggressive with him because if you're gonna protect him, I almost would just put him in Greenville
Let's see what he
because
does. Yeah.
because if you do the math, if he spends all this year in Salem, you add him to the 40, he spends all next year in Greenville, spends all of next year in Portland, like he's gonna be out of options by the time he gets to AAA.
Hmm.
So you kind of need to be a little more aggressive with him if he's someone you're considering adding to the 40.
Sure. Yeah, 100%. 100%. But I loved what I saw out of him. As I mentioned, I also got to see Yordani Monegro. Liked what I saw out of him too. He had 4 pitches he was willing to throw pretty much at any point in any count. His fastball sat about 94 to 96 most of the outing. Later in the outing, it kind of went down to more 93 to 95, trending more in the 93, 94 range. He also threw a cutter, a changeup, and a curveball. The curveball was like 77 to 80. He loves his curveball. I haven't added the numbers up yet, but my guess is he threw the curveball more than any other pitch.
It's a really good curveball
It's a
for
good
his
curveball.
age. Yeah.
Yes, it's a long break. It's like 12 to 6. Some of them are maybe more a little more 11 to 5, but big break on it. He'll, front door it to, to right-handers, back door it to left-handers, also throw it, going out of the zone to try and get swinging strikes on chases. He doesn't always get on top of it. Sometimes he'll kind of leave it out arm side or yank it a little bit glove side, but it's a pretty breaking ball. It's a really nice breaking ball. Potential, maybe a potential plus pitch there. Certainly could get there. Fastball, maybe above average. I mean, the velo is good. It's his command and control is really the big thing. It just really comes and goes throughout the outing. And as I mentioned, loses a little bit of velo late, but that 1-2 combo is interesting. The changeup and cutter are pretty much in the exact same velo band. His changeup is like 86 to 89, which is kind of wild. And so an 86 to 89 mile per hour changeup is not something you see a lot. And yeah, he's 94 to 96, but that's not a ton of separation. So the changeup does, it's a work in progress. It does, we had in our scouting report, it looks like his fastball, he took something off of sometimes. And there were times I wondered if it was like a 2-seam fastball, honestly. So it's, something in that, right. And again, the cutter is in that same kind of mid 80s range, like 84 to 87. So they both kind of sit in that velo band and just break a little differently. The cutter obviously cuts, the changeup, will kind of move arm side a little bit of drop as well. And hold on, a transaction has just come over the wire. Oh no, that's just Briner Bonusy getting a new number. That's frustrating. Oh, Jeremy Wu Yellen removed from his rehab assignment. Let's see, Ian. Breaking news. Yeah, Jeremy Wu Yellen was removed from his rehab assignment, so we're gonna have to find out what the deal is with that. Anyway,
It's
breaking
not
news.
surprising given what we said earlier.
Yeah, given what we heard about his
Oh wow,
last
they
outing.
they have they have Walter up too, so it looks like he's going to pitch in this game. But if he
Interesting.
only throws 2 innings, he probably can throw the 8th again
That's
too.
what he was probably going to do today.
Yeah.
Honestly, I had him down to pitch in relief today, so I could see that makes sense. Might as well use those innings at the major league level. But yeah, at any rate, the thing that was interesting with Monegro is, I mean, he loves the curveball. He would double and triple up on it. Throws all of his pitches in any count. It had a little bit of it, and it reminded me of seeing Chase Shugart with Greenville when Greenville was the low A team, of just like spamming all of his pitches. Like it wasn't necessarily clear what the plan of attack was. And I don't know how much of that is him versus whoever's calling the game or what, or if he's working on something as well, is always a potential possibility. But it just seemed like it was kind of like, curveball, changeup, cutter, curveball, fastball. And it's like, okay, what is with this pitch sequence? Like, I don't understand how you're attacking this hitter. Um, Again, maybe just working on things, who knows? But that said, that was one of the things that really seemed like it needed work, as well as like I said, the command and control, like the command and learning to sequence, learning to pitch. Both of those things really need to improve. And I would say control. I said command, but control needs to improve too, because there were times when he would just kind of lose his control and walk a guy, put guys on. He hit one guy with a changeup that he just lost. So he did get swinging strikes on all of his pitches, with the changeup, with the fastball, and with the curve. It's kind of surprised he didn't get more swinging strikes with the curve, given how much it breaks. I think I've only got one swinging strike on the curve, now that I look at it. So it was kind of interesting that he did get more swinging strikes with the changeup, it looked like, than the curveball. So that kind of surprised me. But that said, yeah, I mean, it was interesting outing from him. I think we're going to have him, the 30s, Ian? Do you have the incoming rankings up, or I can try and pull them up real quick?
He's like
Yeah,
35-ish right now.
yeah, that sounds right. He's a top 40 guy, so he'll be in there. He's interesting. And I guess as far as highlighting other guys, I guess with the hitters, to me, the two standouts were Brooks Brannon. No, sorry, Cutter Coffee. I always do that because of the alliterative name. Cutter Coffee and Alan Castro were the two best guys in the lineup, hitting 1-2 for clear reasons. Coffee can field the shortstop position now, and he's a good defender. And the concern there is he going to grow off the position? Does he have enough range for it? He was confident. He had a really good internal clock. He was really good about knowing when he needed to hurry up and make a throw versus when he had time to set his feet and just let his arm do the work. He had the best arm of any of their infielders by a lot. It's a really good arm. At the plate, he struck me as a little too passive. He really could stand to be a little bit more aggressive. He's got a good approach. He doesn't really expand the zone, but he also looked at pitches he should have swung at, including with 2 strikes. So I would like to see more aggressiveness out of him. But for what we've seen of his numbers, for example, over the course of the season, like the numbers have shown improvement in June, and it wouldn't surprise me if that has come with actual improvement and not just, a balls in play noise type situation. So really liked what I saw out of Coffee. Castro had one of those 3-game sets where he just, the couple of things that come to mind are he had a ball, like a pretty tough play in center field that he lost in the sun and dropped it. And it was one of those things where it happens. He almost made a terrific catch up against the fence when he was playing right field in the first game I saw, but couldn't make the play. At the plate, he looked pretty good. I mean, he, facing Darwin Zuzana, he kind of, fought off, it was marked as a double. It was really a single, but he fought off a pitch to left. Wound up getting to second with some heads up base running. It wasn't nearly like a double. He just got there, and it was probably how they put it in, honestly. But and again in the third, broken back single to right to drive in a run. Like really fought against a really tough pitcher. So that was really good to see against Zuzana. Most of his power is to the pull side. He looks pretty good. He could play all 3 outfield positions. He probably winds up in a corner. Average arm strength. He looked pretty good. Brooks Brannon had a home run that if you go to my Twitter account and actually my Instagram, you can put better video on Instagram than Twitter. The Twitter Instagram is just really down quality when you upload it, but the Instagram one's better. You can see where the ball actually lands, but absolutely yoked one with not a whole lot of effort on his part. He just basically just flicked his wrists on Friday night and just jacked one to left. He's well built, thick lower half. But just the rest of his game, I didn't love him receiving. There were a lot of balls getting by him that, you think like, oh, the pitcher's a little wild. And you think, well, like some of them that is on the pitcher, some of that is he needs to block stuff. So he's a guy that, his chances of staying behind the plate benefit from the automatic strike zone because the framing wasn't great. But I also have some concerns about the blocking. Let's see. Anderson O'Leary, on the other hand, I did really like behind the plate. Liked him receiving, good arm. Like I mentioned, the caught stealing he had in the first inning. Really liked him back there. Worked a good game back there. Looked pretty good at the plate, honestly. He was pretty solid. The rest of the guys, I mean, Luis Ravello and Abram Liendo are 2 guys who really can pick it in the field. Abram Liendo made a really great diving play to end the game on Sunday when he was playing short, just diving, going back to his left up the middle. Both of those guys can really pick it. Ravello's got the better arm. Both have great hands, but just I'm concerned about what they'll do at the plate. I just don't necessarily really see it with, like, even Ravello. He's been okay this year. But he really needs to get bigger, needs to add strength. Um, just the back kind of drags. And so that's one of those things where maybe these guys get stronger and they're able to whip the bat through quicker. We've read about the bat speed work that the Red Sox have done with guys. Maybe those are two guys who would potentially benefit, but just not a whole lot there at the plate with either of those guys yet, in my look. Um, I think that's about it. Anyone you were hoping to hear about, Ian, from Salem? I think that's all the guys I have down
Did
here.
you see Jonathan Brand or Caleb Bolden?
I
I
did
think
see both of them, and in
you just
fact, I
mentioned
saw.
they've been their key relievers this year, and I know they're older for the level, but
Yep. Brand
I
was
think it's worth
interesting because he
mentioning.
pitches backwards. I'm trying to find my notes on
I mean, he's also
him.
really small, so
He's like
I
a
think that
small,
it
he's like
makes
a,
he's like 5'9", 5'10",
he's
so
not a
kind
big
of
guy. I
yeah.
cannot find, for whatever reason, my Jonathan Brand notes. Well, let me give you Bolden because I've got Bolden literally right here. Bolden, I did see him twice. The fastball's like 92 to 94, slider, 81 to 83. And he had a pitch that came in at 86. I don't know if that's like a changeup that he's working on or a cutter or something. He's interesting. He's got kind of a funky sort of mechanics where he like starts with his feet in line to the plate and then like he steps to first while turning his upper body to third, but it like puts him in like a normal pitching position. It's weird. Um, but he looked pretty good. I mean, he, didn't necessarily stand out, but he was, it was interesting. Brand was really interesting to me. If I can just find my notes on Brand, why aren't they here? Perez, Rita Sena, Marquez Johnson was also interesting. Johnson was 93 to 96 with a fastball that just really seemed like it had a ton of ride. Um, really kind of interesting arm action. It looked kind of off putting to hitters. The slider looked interesting as well. The slider was 82 to 85. He threw both of them. And then a changeup he doesn't really throw. But yeah, he was also kind of interesting. So I put him in the interesting relievers bucket from there. And if I could just find Jonathan Brand, this tremendous audio. Can I leave Brand here? Well, here, I'll find my notes on Jonathan Brand. Why don't we kick to you in the meantime, Ian, on Portland in particular, that infield, which is really, two of the system's top four prospects. I think four, right? We have York at four, right? Yeah. Two of the system's top four prospects plus one of the breakout guys this year in Chase Mydroth. I think that's something a lot of folks want to hear about while I find my Jonathan Brand notes.
All right. I did. I saw Portland for a few games up in New Hampshire, and I think my biggest takeaway is Nick York probably hates when I go to games because he always just
It's
I don't
tough
know what
luck
it
you
is.
have with him, man.
He just really can't hit pitches in the zone when I'm there. And I think that's my biggest concern with him is that as good as his season numbers are, his in zone miss rate is really high for someone with an advanced hit tool. And watching him kind of just swing through, 89 in the zone again, or, pretty easy, like a pretty hanging breaking ball. Like in just looking at the doubleheader, he swung through. He was in the first game. He was 1 for 4 with 3 strikeouts, and he had 6 swinging strikes over those 3 strikeouts. And I would probably guess 4 of them, 5 of them were in the zone because he doesn't really chase. It's just all in zone miss. And then in the second game, he was 1 for 5. I think one. Yeah, 1 for 5 with 2 strikeouts, and then he had another 3 or 4 swinging strikes in that game. So it's just I like Nick York. I think that he's going to be a major leaguer. My big question with him, and it's why I've kind of gone back and forth and have bumped Roman Anthony ahead of him, is I just don't think there's an impact tool other than maybe his hit tool. Like he's a
Mhm.
fringy runner, he's a fringy defender. So powers, it's probably average raw power. I think it plays a little below that in game. So for that profile, you really have to hit. You have to be a 60 hitter at least. And I think he's got a chance to be a plus hitter, but the hardest thing to do in baseball right now is,
Yeah.
hit for average consistently. And
And he's gonna
I just
have to is the problem, right?
yeah, he really has to. And like it worries me when how many times I've gone to games and came away and been like, he's fine. But I just, I need to see some of those games where you go out there and obviously, it's a small sample. I've probably seen him, 8 to 10 games this year. But I'd like to go in there and just see like a game where he hits, 4 rockets and he's turning around 95 like he used to do when I saw in Greenville a couple years ago.
Mhm.
And I just haven't seen that from him this year. It's just been a lot of his singles. Like he'll get line drive singles, but it's not, he's not driving the ball like he used to. And the end zone miss is just alarming that I feel like every time, and we've talked about it, every time I go to it, I cite it as an issue and it just constantly keeps cropping up. Like it's hard to carry a zone contact rate around 70% and be a consistent hitter at the big leagues. So I'd like to see him cut down on some of that. And, um, yeah, like, and this is the thing, like, he still had a hit in both those games. He still can hit a little. It's just, I don't know what it is about in zone, whether he's just maybe a little trying to be a little too passive or what, but he's got around like a 25% strikeout rate in double A. And if you told me that based on what we saw from him at the plate in the low minors, I would have said that was a little high. Because usually you add around 5% to the like that's he'd be if based on project the models, it's about a 30% strikeout rate in the majors. So it's a little high for me. I just like to see him kind of tighten that up and get back to just put the ball in play more. But
Mhm.
he's still a top 5 prospect in the system. Don't get me wrong. So I still like him. Marcelo Meyer, I feel bad. Like his numbers in Portland are not good. He's still ripping the ball, and it's
Yeah.
funny because, and I said it on Twitter. It's like he's just gonna have a week where he hits like 350, 450, 550, and his numbers will be fine again.
Yeah.
You look at it. He's got a 190 BABIP at Double A right now. I'm gonna guess that's not gonna be sustainable.
Yeah.
Like
No.
that's not gonna stay like that. So I'm not worried about him. I think he's very good. He in the games he had a double, nice line drive in one of the games, a couple walks, couple he had another single. So yeah, I was very impressed with him. I think physically he really stands out. He's cut down the swing and miss since he was promoted, which I think is pretty interesting. He's gone from like 23% to now he's at 19% strikeout rate. He doesn't really chase, he puts together good at bats. He had a couple like I noted a couple like 10 pitch at bats in one in each game. So he can really work the count. He really has good feel at the plate. He doesn't have any trouble with velocity. Like he'll turn around 95, 96 miles an hour, no problem. The one I do think there will be some swing and miss though with his swing. He does have a little trouble. I've noticed on fastballs up, especially good ones. And I do think his swing can get a little long at times, and I do wonder if that's kind of part of it. But yeah, overall, I mean, he's going to be fine. Don't worry. Don't look at the numbers in Portland. It's not an issue. And in the field, I thought he was excellent. I know there's some people have been questioning his defense, but he's one of those guys that glides in the field. Like he's 6'3", and he uses all of it. He has really good range. I've noticed he's comfortable charging. He's got it's like a plus arm. He can plenty of arm to make that throw from the hole. It's very confident in it, and I think he's really fluid. Like he checks all the boxes for me as a defender for what I want to see out there. And I guess the concern would be maybe he'll outgrow the position. That's the only thing I could think of people who are questioning whether or not he can stay at short. But I think he's fine there, and I think that he's got a chance to be an above average shortstop with a plus arm. And when you put that total package together, we're talking about a potential 55, 60 player. So I think people should be excited about him because he's coming and he's coming pretty soon. And I think there's a chance we see him up in the big leagues at some point next year. The other player and he's someone who I've been very skeptical on mainly because of his size is Chase
I draw.
Meidroth. And he just gets on base. Like, and I know it's weird to say. I don't know if he has another tool that's above like a 40, but he can really hit and just he's always on base. It does he's hitting cleanup and it doesn't matter, who's pitching, he's gonna find a way to get on base, whether it be hit by pitches, singles, walks. It's always quality at bats. He doesn't chase, he doesn't miss in the zone. You know what he is? He's like that throwback player. That like when you create a player in a video game and they just they just go up there and they're just an on-base machine who, you have the smallest strike zone possible, just makes a ton of contact. And that's what he does. And my big question of why he kind of has a pretty low ceiling, like it's a high floor, low ceiling type guy, why he's someone I probably won't ever even put in the top 10 in the system, is he doesn't really impact the baseball. He doesn't hit the ball that hard. There's no real power, and it's there. I have concerns about how he'll handle more advanced pitching that realizes that he's not going to punish them. But at the same time, I think, like, and I'm not comparing to this player, but seeing like what Luis Ariz and some other contact oriented approaches have done at the major league level, it's shown you don't necessarily have to hit the ball as hard as others if you're putting it in the right spot. And I think Mydroth has the bat control and kind of the swing decisions to be someone who outperforms their expected, results based on their exit velo data because of how good their feel is at the plate.
Yeah, and
So
just to interrupt
yeah,
real quick, it seemed like people thought he was starting to hit for power in Double A. In his last 12 games, he has one extra base hit. Like
he's not a power
it
hitter.
was
He
it
is
was a
he is
short stretch when he like went crazy with power, but that's why you have to sit
was
back
it
and
in
wait for the
Reading?
sample size to get better.
Was it in Reading by any chance?
No, it wasn't in Reading.
Oh,
It
okay.
was actually like between Somerset and at home.
Oh, okay. But he's not a power hitter. He's not going to be a power threat ever, but he's someone who I would not be surprised if when they get up to the big leagues, he's just going to hit. Like, he's going to hit for singles. He's going to hit a bunch of singles. He's going to get on base. Defense, he's okay. It's not great. Like, he's passable at third. He probably profiles better at second.
But they have to
But
play him at third right now.
if he can play third, second, and maybe left field with his hit tool, he's going to get up to the big leagues and play there for a while. But it's just not a lot of impact, and that's why is what's going to keep him outside of like the top 10 in the system for me, is that lack of impactability.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Anyone else on that? Let me look at the lineup, which I of course moved.
Not I mean, Hickey. I like
right? That's the
Hickey.
guy I want to talk
He
about.
hits the ball hard. It's good at bats.
How the receiving look?
He didn't catch, of course. He DH'd and played. He DH'd when I saw him, so
Awesome.
no catching. And then I think maybe we'll talk about the pitchers briefly. I saw Grant Gambrell for the first time since he joined the system,
Mm-hmm.
so that was interesting.
In the Benintendi trade, for those wondering, as a player
Yeah,
named later, but
yeah, and we've obviously heard. I think Chris Smith talked a lot about what he's gone
his
through to get back on the mound.
heel/ankle deal he was
Like
dealing
a
with.
tumor,
Yeah.
a benign
5 surgeries, I think.
Yeah, benign tumor. Was that the
Yeah.
right terminology? I think.
I think so. Yeah, it wasn't malignant.
Yeah, but he's a 4-pitch guy: fastball, slider, changeup. Or excuse me, he's a 5-pitch guy. I should say it's fastball, slider, curveball, changeup, maybe cutter. It's the cutter slider. It might be one pitch. I think it is one pitch. Yeah, but he's probably a reliever, but this stuff's okay. He's like 90 to 94. Breaking cutters like mid to high 80s, curveballs low 80s, changeups 83 to 85. But a bunch of like 45s and 50 pitches. Curveball gets the most, is kind of his go-to swing and miss pitch. But he's a solid little arm. He strikes me as more of kind of like a depth type. Maybe he'll get up to the big leagues as a reliever in some capacity, but he's a decent find, and I think it's his numbers kind of when I look at what he's doing in Double A, it kind of makes sense. Like a 4 ERA, little less than a strikeout per inning. He's got to tighten up the command a little, few too many walks, but yeah, he's a good pitcher, a good depth pitcher at worst, and maybe you can get a guy who can turn into a multi-inning reliever or a bullpen piece.
Speaking of the bullpen, a couple guys interesting there. You saw.
Yeah, I saw Christopher Troy pitching in a regular season game for the first time. That was interesting, and of course, I think he left. He left with an injury in his latest outing, so we'll have to see what that is, because he's obviously had some trouble with injuries in his career so far.
He's apparently said it's not a big deal.
Okay,
but we'll see if that bears out.
That is good to know. He was good. He was 94 to 96, cutter 90 to 91, curveball 83 to 85. It's a power breaking ball. Big 12 to 6 vertical break. He kind of throws from that over the top arm slot, so it's a lot of north south. But I kind of like how the way his arsenal works when you've got he pitches fastball up, curveballs down, cutter, slider, left, right, or well, I guess mostly glove side. But he's got some life on the fastball. He's got to tighten up the command. That's the biggest thing holding. Well, it's control, but command and control right now. I think he's walking like 10 per 9 in Double A right now, but he's also striking out 17 per 9. So he misses a ton of bats. He got like 7, 8 swing and misses in in an inning and a change where he kind of got screwed in the second inning where the game was over and they called catcher's interference to extend it and then he got taken out. So that was unfortunate, but he misses bats. His fastball's got really big life and carry up in the zone. It's a big body, like big frame, pretty intimidating mound presence. So he's someone that if he can tighten up and get the walks under control, has a chance to be a pretty interesting relief prospect. But the command and control is pretty rough right now. So there's a long way to go with that.
How about
The other
Ryan
guy,
Zephyr-John? Yeah.
yeah, Zephyr John is it's actually it's kind of a similar profile, honestly. Zephyr John's like, 95 to 98, 95 to 97. Big fastball, slider, curveball, sliders 89 to 90, curveballs in the 80, 77, 78 range. He can just blow his fastball by hitters, but it's just command and control is a little iffy with him. And I think the biggest difference between the two is that I just like the characteristics or the way Troy's fastball plays up a little better than Zephyr John's. Um, I just think that his has a better chance. It's got more carry, whereas I think Zephyr John's is like a little straighter, a little flatter. But both are pretty interesting. Both are hard throwing guys, and the way baseball is going, that's what you need. You need hard throwing relievers. So if either of them could kind of figure out that command and control and unlock that in at a reasonable level, then the Red Sox have a chance to have a couple of really hard throwing guys coming out of the bullpen in a couple of years.
Real quick, before we move on to a couple guys in Worcester, we want to mention quickly before we get to the draft and the emails, which we're kind of running out of time here. Jonathan Brand, just because you asked, 4 pitches. The fastball is like 90, 91, but then he reaches back and gets 94 when he wants it, which he did like twice. But he also pitches backwards. I think he threw like 4 or 5 fastballs in his entire 20 pitch outing that I saw.
Yeah,
Mostly works off the changeup at 84 to 86, and he got multiple swinging strikes on the changeup. Curveball is 76 to 80, 11 to 5, somewhere between 11 to 5 and vertical, big breaker. And he'll mix in a shorter, sharp slider that he threw a few all at 84 in the outing I saw. High effort, a lot of recoil in the delivery, but just kind of interesting guy out of the bullpen. I don't know. It didn't strike me as like, a guy I'm going to push into the rankings, but kind of interesting as a low minors
it's a
closer to
solid
see
like
where that goes.
org depth
Solid
guy.
org arm, could make it
Yeah,
high minors. I could see him in Double A easily. And we'll see
yeah.
where it goes from there. Really quick, and then we got to move on really quick to draft and emails. 2 guys in Worcester that you saw, Ian, that I'm interested in hearing about, and Shane Drohan and Bobby Dahlbeck. Completely different sides of the Worcester player development line, but 2 guys who are intriguing, and I'm sure folks want to hear about nonetheless.
Yeah, with Drohan, it's interesting. So he's his numbers since he's got to Worcester are not great. I think his ERA is around 5. Walks are up, strikeouts are down, things like that. And the part that is just weird for me is he's kind of abandoned his cutter. It's turned more into a true slider now.
Slider. Yeah.
Yeah, it's
What's
like
that about?
82 to 84. I don't know. Which is I like the cutter more than I like the slider. I'll tell you that. It's like 82 to 84. And what's weird to me with that is that it like his curveball is kind of fringy already. Like the slider and this outing, I thought it was bad. I put a 40 on it. And I saw his cutter and I was like, maybe it's a 55, or excuse me, maybe it's a 50 pitch average-ish. So it's just interesting that he's kind of morphed into more of a true like 10 to 4 2-plane slider. His changeup was really good in this outing. I put a plus on it. Like that's his best pitch by far. Really deceptive arm speed. Good, got really nice late action on it. So changeup's really good. Fastball's like 91 and 93. Had a lot of trouble with his command in this outing. It's like a fringy pitch. So the curveball was 11 to 5. Not inconsistent. It was pretty inconsistent, but he when sequenced correctly, it can be effective. And I think that's the biggest thing for him is that it'd be nice if that velocity they showed earlier in the season, he hasn't really had it as of late. He's been like 91 or 93 when I've seen him. Whereas earlier in the season, he was up to like 95, 96. He was mostly like 92, 93, 92, 94. So we'll see if that velo comes back. But yeah, the slider cutter thing is weird. I want to see him again to see if that's an actual full-time change, but that was a little interesting to me. And then Bobby Dahlbeck, I know he's been crushing the ball in Worcester, which he will do.
Mhm.
Like he's a really good minor league hitter. But seeing him in person and it's just the same issues are there. Like there's a lot of swing and miss. Strikeout rate in Worcester is 33%, even though he's hitting, 295, 416, 645,
Right.
or 34% strikeout rate. So I just have concerns that if that's what you're doing in AAA, it's probably not going to get any better at the major league level. Like, he still can hit home runs, he still can take a walk, but there's just a ton of swing and miss still, even against average-ish stuff, both chase and in zone. And the other thing is, I saw him in the outfield, and it's really rough out there, which is understandable. He's not an outfielder, but he's not someone I would be comfortable putting out in the outfield in the major league game. And so that's still, he's pretty limited defensively when, if he can only play first or third base. I'm not, they're in a weird position with him because I don't think he makes a lot of sense for the current roster as constructed. But at
Right.
the same time, I'm not sure how much interest there is, but he's also too good to DFA. So it's a weird, he's kind of caught in no man's land in the sense that he's not good enough for or he doesn't fit what the Red Sox need right now, but he's too good to DFA. So, I mean, I wonder, I have to imagine they're going to try to move him at the deadline again,
Mhm.
even if it's for someone off the 40 man just to clear that spot.
Yeah.
But I think a change of scenery is probably best for both parties at this point. But
Well, it's interesting because like articles about both him and like Ryan Fitzgerald recently, they both mentioned that the organization's been really straightforward with them that like you are playing for the other 29 teams right now, more or less. Like that's where your best opportunity is probably going to be. And I mean, good for them for taking that, at face value and working, you know, to do what they've got to do to get that opportunity, whether it's with this organization or not. And look, I want the organization to be straight up with those guys, right? Like, look,
yeah,
don't get frustrated when we don't call you up because we just have no intention of doing it. Like,
yeah, yeah.
you're out
But
there
it's
trying to perform for a team that wants to come get you.
I think it's a little different though with Fitzgerald because at least Fitzgerald's not on the 40 man, whereas Dahlbeck
Right.
is taking up a 40 man
And
spot. It's
he's
just
and if
tough.
and if he's not like, look, I mean, look, Casas is going to be the guy. And it's like, great. I get Dahlbeck's been great in AAA. Great. Like he's not the first guy to tear the cover off the ball in AAA who's got significant limitations in the majors. Right. And it's not like other teams don't know that. This
It's
isn't
just
your fantasy league.
it's a 34% strikeout rate in AAA. That's just not going to work.
No,
Like,
no. He is what he is. And
yeah.
I'd like to see him get some run and see if he can work it out and see what happens. But I don't know what team is going to give him that. Could Oakland or Kansas City give him that run? Maybe, but I don't know. We'll see what happens there.
And the
All
problem is,
right.
like, you look at Kansas City, they have a first baseman with similar issues in Nick Prado
Who's
already up.
Oh, I was going to say, because Pasquantino is on the IL.
Yeah, he's out for the year, but
Yeah.
Prado is playing first base and he strikes out a ton.
Is he playing first now? Because I know he added like left field as well.
Yeah. But and then I guess Oakland, I don't even know who's playing first base in Oakland. But yeah.
Yeah. All right. Well, fair enough. Let's move on really quick. Ian, draft is this coming Sunday. It's Sunday through Tuesday. The Red Sox pick 14th in the first round. Their picks are, if I can pull it up here really quickly.
I will gotta say I've been diving way too deep into the draft for the 14th pick. It's bad. Because
Well, that's why, I mean, honestly, like folks will ask us,
pick, it's like, who knows?
and it's like, well, even at the 14th pick, because I think it's pretty funny, and I think this really tells it all. The Red Sox have been linked to high school hitters by Jim Callis of MLB.com and to college hitters by Keith Law and Kylie McDaniel, which
and
I am
both
not
have said
hating
pretty
on.
confidently that that's
Yes.
what they're focusing on.
And it's like, I'm not throwing shade at any of them. They're all really good at what they do. But it just goes to show, like, we have no idea what they're going to do. And if anything has defined the kind of Paul Taboni and now Devin Pearson, who I always want to call Devin Benson because they have a PR guy who's Devin Benson, but it's Devin Pearson. Pearson is the new amateur draft guy.
Yeah, no,
okay,
he
thank
is,
you. Yeah, I always want to call him Devin Benson. Is that you don't know what they're going to do. I mean, this is the Nick York, Mikey Romero. I mean, yeah,
well, no, we know
Meyer is different.
We do know what they're going to do. They're going to take a hitter. They're not going to take a pitcher. Let's be honest.
Well, probably not going to take a pitcher. Yeah, I mean, it's going to be BPA, and it's almost certainly going to be a hitter that's BPA.
Yeah,
right.
It's like, but the thing is, we're going to finally get comfortable in saying they're not taking a pitcher, and then they're going to take a pitcher.
And what's going to fall to them, right?
But I just don't. I just
like,
think
look, if Skeens falls, they're going to take Skeens.
But
right?
I think part of the reason why they don't take pitchers though is I just feel like it's easier to find pitchers lower in the draft that turn out, and they're never in a position. There's also so much more risk with the way the draft works, and I think a good look at the way their slots are set up this year. Their first round pick is worth 4.6, basically 4.7 million. Their next pick at 50 is 1.7 million. That's a $3 million difference.
Yep.
If you take a pitcher with that pick and miss, you just burned 40% of your draft budget on nothing.
Yeah.
Like, that's a major issue. And so I just think it makes a lot more sense to just go pitcher volume and just take hitters with your high picks. And, some are going to turn out, some aren't, but at least with the hitter, you have a better chance of them staying healthy at least. And I
And
think that's, yeah.
You've got that stretch between pick 115 and 151 where they pick 4 times because of the 2 comp picks they got.
They're going to take pitchers in there.
That's where you start attacking pitchers. I would guess.
And that's
We'll
why this draft is going to be so interesting is they have those extra picks for the first time in years. I mean, I guess they had the extra 2 last year,
but they had lost one as well.
They lost one the year before. These are legit gain picks. Granted, they should have been after the second round, but that's a different story.
Yeah.
But
God, can you imagine? Anyway.
It would have been great. But anyway, so they've got pick 14, pick 50, second round, 83, third round, 115, fourth round, 132, 133, which are after the fourth round compensation picks, and then 151. I don't need to go any further.
And then it's every
every 20, whatever, 30 picks or whatever it is.
Well, it's every 30 picks starting with 178.
Yeah. But they've got a chance with those extra picks to move some money around. Like, if you do the math, you could easily float a $2.5 million guy to your second pick if there's someone they really like, especially,
or even the third pick if you go under slot in one of the first 2.
Well, exactly. So that's why it's going to be, I do wonder if, because of how lopsided their draft pool is, I could see a college hitter making sense, especially if they will take like 4 million or something. You know what I mean?
Yep.
Because if you can save $650K there to move to another pick, you can get, 3 1.5 million plus talents, which I think is pretty interesting.
Yeah.
So that's the first thing I'm going to keep an eye on is who, like the first round pick, like what is that? Were they someone they were linked for? What is the projection in terms of like bonus demands and the guys they've been linked for in mock drafts?
Yeah. One sec.
So if you look at the mock drafts, what the one trend is the guys they've been linked to recently are pretty much almost exclusively shortstops or third base types. It's high school infielders, as we said with MLB, like Aiden Miller. And I saw them with Colin Houck with high school shortstop from Georgia, a couple other guys like that. And then if it's college guys, it's Matt Shaw, Braden Taylor, the Stanford kid, Tommy Troy, Jacob Wilson, players like that. So, I don't know exactly if those are guys you can necessarily save money on, but, it fits the profile of players they've taken in the past, which is part of why I think they're constantly linked to that type of guy. And I would not be surprised at all if they take another infielder. It seems like kind of that's the way we're trending. But yeah, I think for me, it's, best player available. And I would like to just get as much impact as possible. I'm not sure that the guys like a Jacob Wilson or an Enrique Bradfield type do much for me. Like, I understand they probably have a high probability of being big leaguers, but that defense first profile with like low exit velos, that just doesn't excite me. And I think we've seen that type of guy struggle as they move up the ladder. So I'd rather try to swing for the fences and give me as much upside as possible. So we'll see what they do. But I think it's going to be an interesting evening because Sunday, then the way the draft, just a quick primer, Sunday will be the first 2 rounds, starts at 7 p.m., I believe. Monday is rounds 3 to 10, and then Tuesday is 11 to 20. So 3-day extravaganza out in Seattle, starting on Sunday night. And it'll be pretty interesting to see what they do. And we'll hopefully be back with our usual reaction pod right after the first 2 picks happen on Sunday night. Yeah.
Yep. Exactly. Yeah. We will be on Sunday night for a recap. And then I got to get in touch with, I mean, let's just say Jim. I mean, hopefully Jim we can get back on.
He comes on every year after the draft.
Yeah. So we'll talk to Jim and try and get him back on.
Even if we can't get him necessarily that week, we'll be back to recap the draft that week. So
yes, 100%.
Big. It's a big week in the Red Sox system. I mean, it's going to have a bunch of new players to start scouting and get more info on. So it's pretty exciting. The next few days are going to be some fun stuff leading up to the draft, and then with the draft itself.
We'll see how it goes. And keep an eye on news.soxprospects.com, where we're going to be covering the draft. We'll have our previews and things like that. That'll go up there. Mike, I'm sure, is going to do I think Mike will do his preview this year, and we'll be covering each pick as they come up there. So if you want information on guys, that's a great place to go. Again, news.soxprospects.com. And with that, we're going to wrap it up. We're going to hunt emails to our next episode. So keep an eye out there. We're not forgetting about them. We're so long on this one. And frankly, I've got to go. So we're going to do emails next episode. But again, you can send them to podcast@soxprospects.com if you've got a question about anything we talked about today. Hit us up there. You can follow us on Twitter. You can follow Ian at Ian Cundall. That's IANCUNDALL. And follow me at SP Chris Hatfield, both on Twitter and Instagram, where I posted a video for the first time this weekend. And you can follow the site at Sox Prospects, both on Twitter and Instagram. We want to give a shout out to all of our supporters on patreon.com, as well as who are supporting us on the Sox Prospects donation drive at soxprospects.com/donate. But on Patreon, we always give a shout out to our $5 level Patreon supporters. First, we want to welcome our newest $5 level supporters. That would be Ben Wadman, I think Wadman. Hit me up with how to pronounce your name. I'm sorry. And Andrew Del Rosso. Thank you both for joining us, as well as our Patreon supporters, Deb Kendall, Lendl Martin, Ernest Shermer, Kyle C., Tyler Woodrow, Pat New Hampshire, Jeff Trainer, David Nardone, Tim Harding, and Bill Stanton. Thank you all for listening. Thank you all for your support. We will be back soon. We'll be back quicker. Like I mentioned, like Ian mentioned, we're going to be back on for a quick reaction pod after the draft night 1 on Sunday, and we'll, do a longer episode next week where we do your emails and talk about probably the new rankings as well as the drafts. We're going to have plenty to talk about there, so we're going to have to definitely record one next week. So we'll be back in your eardrums soon. Thanks for listening, everybody.